Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel with Love Ife, and thank you so much for joining me on the third part of my chapter 1. Today I am drinking this wine called Frontera, but it's Cabernet Sauvignon. It's not exactly my favorite wine, but I did get it as a gift. And it actually tastes okay. Like, so far it's a little bit dry. It's not one of my favorite. I don't hate it, but it'll do for today. Okay, so today I will be continuing on my story on how the death of my friend affected me, grief in general, anxiety, panic attacks, how that all just tied into my process at the time, and also on the importance of being involved in a relationship where you both are moving in the same path, or at least in a similar path. So just remember that my focus is on coming from a place of love and understanding, and in my journey I'd be focusing more on the mind, body, and soul experience when being involved with a relationship with God. So I hope you enjoy this episode. Thank you for joining. That just made me question things more, and I just really wanted to know more. And then I told my boyfriend again at the time, and he was just like, whoa, like I really don't know what to make of it. So for me, again, I will stress the importance of having someone close to you that is spiritual. It's important to have someone of the same faith. I'm not saying that you shouldn't consider other people of other faiths, but it's so important in your process, in your journey, in your spiritual life, to have someone of the same faith that believes in similar things as you do. It just makes things easier in general. So for me at that point, like, I came from a Christian family, and so did he, but he had made up his mind on a different faith. And that's fine, you know, that's just where he was at the time, but where I was at was different. I didn't realize that then. So eventually, when our relationship progressed, I just felt like there were just so many things that we just were not compatible on at all. And it really affected the relationship. It got really toxic at some point, and it just didn't work. Long distance as well didn't help. There was like a lot of healing that I needed to do at that time. So a few days before I was to travel back to Nigeria, I called my boyfriend at the time and I told him I don't think I should come. Okay, prior to that, my mom called me and she's like, oh, I saw this person. She called a name and it was his name actually. And my mom doesn't really know him. So till today, I'm still wondering like how she found out that information. It's hard to comprehend these things because of who it's coming from sometimes. So it's hard to like, I don't know how to explain it, but you know, if you grew up in a family in a Christian home, there are certain like patterns that you notice in different individuals in your family. And when she wants to pass on a message, sometimes she tends to like add her own like little interpretation to it from like knowledge that she already knows. So for me, I was a little bit skeptical of her and her dream, the dream that she was seeing. But she calls me up and she's like, oh, you know, I saw this of you and somebody was taking you somewhere and they wanted to like cut off your head and use it for like a ritual or whatever. And I was just like, why are you always like calling me up to tell me bad things? Why don't you always call me up like to say, I had a really good dream about you? So for me, I just got like really upset when she told me that. And at this point, she didn't actually know I was coming home. I was going to Nigeria at that time. Then I called my boyfriend and I was like, yeah, you know, this is so weird, but this is what she said. This is her dream. And she said, you know, she saw a writing on the wall, something with your name and blah, blah, blah. Because obviously, what did I know? So I was like, I don't feel like I should come. Because mind you, I was going through like anxiety and panic attacks, and I didn't know, like I was so scared. So I was just like, and then her calling me up at that moment even made it so much worse. So that's another thing I would stress, is that it's so important when you're passing on a message from God, or, you know, a dream or a vision, to know the mindset of the person that you're passing on the message to. Because if you don't know their mindset, you might get them, or you might catch them at a place where that's not the message that they need to hear right now. And it might have like the opposite reaction. And that's not what God wants. So it's important to just ask God. Like if God shows you something, it's important to ask God to tell you when the right time is to tell somebody or to give somebody this message. That's another thing that I've learned in my journey. Timing is 100% important. So she called me up at that time and she put more fear in my heart, because I already had fear from before. And I'm calling my boyfriend saying, I don't want to come. So then he took it to some next level. He was like, we were already having some issues in our relationship, long distance and everything. And now you're saying you don't want to come because of... I didn't explain it to him. I just told him I didn't want to come. And he was just like, why? Like he was really confused, but I didn't know how to explain what I was feeling at the time. So then he just took it to another level, which is kind of understandable. Then I was like, fine, I'll come, whatever. So I ended up going. My anxiety like reduced a little bit. So he picked me up from the airport and then we both went to the hotel together. Because usually what I do is whenever I go home, I stay at a hotel first, a location, and then I tend to go to my parents' house after that. So I stayed at the hotel with him. And I remember one time I was sleeping in the middle of the night and I just like woke up suddenly. And I like woke up in so much fear. And I looked across the room and he was just standing there like right beside the bed. And I was just like, what happened? What happened? What did you do? And he's like, nothing. Like, why did you wake up like that? And I was just kind of like, I don't know. And then he was like, are you okay? Like, is everything okay with you? And I was like, I think so. And then I just slowly went back to bed. And then the next morning he was like, what was that? And I was just like, I don't know. But like, let me also just make a point here, is that my spirit was alert. My soul was alert. Even if my body didn't recognize it at first, my soul was alert. So when all of that stuff was happening, and then because of what my mom told me prior to coming, it kind of like put more fear in me, but also alerted my soul and my spirit to like possible like spiritual like impacts of this situation and this person. I'm not saying he was a bad person, but I'm just saying that it just made my spirit more alert somehow. And so, you know, that whole situation happened. This is my story. It's a little long, but I think it's important. And more will come later, but this is just like a brief but kind of long summary of my story. Fast forward to December 2019. I was going back to Lagos. Now, prior to that, I had a lot of healing to do, because after I got back to the UK, we had a huge fight again and we broke up. I was the one that broke it off, but even if I didn't want to at the time, I just said it, and that was it. It was done. And because of the progression of the relationship after that, I eventually came back and reflected. I was like, maybe God really wanted me to break up with this person because of the way the person reacted. And you know, when someone reacts a certain way, you start to see different sides of the person. And especially because this was like more of a long distance relationship. So you can't really see much because you're distant most of the time. So the way it happened, I know he had told me in the past that he probably would never break up with me. Like if he ever breaks up with me, it would be because it was me, it was coming from me. And I was just like, I kind of just brushed it off like, okay, I mean, people say that, so, you know. So he already had it in his mind that I was it for him. And so we would like talk about life and talk about our future. He was even like planning to move to Canada, you know. So we're just making all these plans. And then all these things just came in between, and it was just too much for me to handle, to be honest. I was not in any position to be in a relationship. So when we had that breakup conversation, I just said it. And then, you know, it happened. And then I tried to like be like, okay, maybe we can work things out. Like maybe we can see what we can do. And he, you know, he wasn't having it. He said he was broken. He said, you know, he didn't think that I would do this, said a lot of things. And I was just like, you know what? Like we took some time apart. He's like, maybe in 4 weeks we could like talk about this. So I like put myself on hold for four weeks, and then I would come back and be like, oh no, it's 4 weeks now. And then maybe like he would like push it again and be like, oh yeah, maybe in like another month or two, you know, we can see where this goes and we can have another conversation. Because right now I don't, like he said this, he's like, right now I don't see a way forward. And I was already like going through the motions. Like this was just like the hay, well, how do they say it? The hay that broke the camel's back. Is that how it's said? I don't know. But this was like the last straw. So for me, I was like, okay, this is it, you know? And I took it really hard. So I was in Scotland at the time. And then with my other friend that we had some classes together. And I just told her everything that happened because we were pretty close. So I told her everything that happened. And I was just like, you know what? This is what's going on in my relationship. So she would call me every once in a while and we'll like chat. And I was just like, yeah, I don't think it's gonna work. And I just was like, you know what? I want to go home. I want to go to Canada. Like I'm tired. Then she was like, okay, I think it's a good idea to go to Canada. I booked my ticket. And, you know, I wanted to just go there and spend like a month or so. But I went and ended up spending like 3 months. So I was in the middle of my final paper on my dissertation. And I just came here and I just like wanted to be with family. I just wanted to be with people I knew. Like I was just going through so much. So I just came, traveled around a bit, went to see my brothers and sisters in like different cities, and just made sure that I just had a good time. Like I said, self-care is really important to me. So one of my self-care, like I would say one of my love languages is traveling. I love to travel. I don't know, like it's like traveling is just good for the soul. Like nothing comes close to like the feeling that you get from traveling, and it just refreshes your soul. It just does. I don't know how to explain it, but it just does. So for me, I traveled back home. And then, you know, we took a break from talking every day, every single day. Not like phone conversations, but more like we used to text a lot, to like talking like never. So obviously that was hard. Really, really hard for me. Because I just felt like after everything that was going on, I just felt like a part of me was just going and was just gone. And it was really hard. So I took some time. I had fun. I had some good times, you know. I was not good. Spiritually, I was not going in the right direction. But I just needed time to just detox and just heal. But I didn't take that time to heal. I took that time to distract myself from healing, right? So when I eventually went back to the UK, I moved from Scotland to London, And we just figured it just wasn't gonna work. It was a whole process. And then I started to discover some things that I didn't even know about him in the relationship, how cold he would get, how uncommunicative he would get, like all of his toxic traits I learned after the fact. So that's another thing. What I learned is long distance relationship, I don't believe it works if you do not have a foundation, an in-person foundation first. And that's going to be another topic that we will talk about later on on the channel, because I feel like it's important for people to understand relationships in general. So long distance relationships does not work for the most part, except if you have an in-person foundation first. So those things I started to discover about him, it was, a lot of toxic things. Obviously, I was toxic too, in so many different ways, because I was just dealing with so much. So it's only after, because a lot of times I would be toxic. I would get a lot of blames for being that way, even on top of the fact that he was aware that I was going through all of these things. And it's not an excuse, but I feel like it was a reason to cut me some slack a little bit in some of the ways that we were dealing with our relationship. I didn't feel like I was given that time and patience. So for him, I learned, a lot in that time after the relationship. And it's only after talking to my therapist, because I eventually signed up to like an online therapy session. And I used to talk to my therapist like once or twice a week. And when I would like feel down, I would like message her and be like, oh, I'm not feeling very well today. Like, I feel really down, and then she would respond to me, and that would make me feel better. And then we'll like talk on the phone once a week. So it was really helpful. And that goes to my next point. I would say therapy and counseling is important in your healing process. So I'm going to be talking about healing later on this channel as well, because I think it's important too. Therapy is very important in your healing, because you need to heal first, physically, spiritually, and mentally, right? So it's a mind, body, and soul experience always. And a lot of times, a lot of people forget about the body and the mind, and they move on to the soul. And the soul is more like where spirituality comes in. But instead of spirituality, a lot of people get it wrong and go into religiosity. So that's where a lot of Christians don't really get it right. And that's why a lot of people step outside of the faith. But that's a conversation again for another day. But I'm just bringing it back up to see how it relates to my journey, my story, my process. Eventually, my therapist told me, you were dealing with a lot, and, there's nothing you could have done that would have been different. There's no right way to deal with the situation. And it was what it was. So she just made me understand and realize that everything is, the way that you handled it. Like, there's no other way you could have. So I was like, oh wow, like I've never thought about it this way, So she just was able to give me like so many different perspectives that I was just kind of like, without her, I don't know how I would have like continued my healing process. I feel like my healing process would have been a lot longer, because at this point I was now healing from grief for my friend dying. I was now healing from all the stuff that was going on with school. I was healing from a toxic relationship that I had been in prior to this new relationship. And that toxic relationship would be another topic of conversation, because that was like a different kind of toxicity. So I was healing from that too. And then almost immediately I went back into another relationship. So it was back to back. I did not take some time to heal right after that relationship before going into the next one. So I was healing from that. I was healing from my current relationship that just ended. I was healing from just a whole bunch. I don't think that I've ever been through a tougher time in my life than this time. And this was all when I had moved away from an environment that I knew people at. This was all when I was alone. My isolation process pretty much started in 2018 because I was alone. I had left a different environment, but I think that God was just using that to push me. My spiritual life, he used that to push me, like to motivate me, like, you know, God is closer to you in your moments of vulnerability. Thank you so much for watching, and I really do hope that you did enjoy this part of my story. It's all part of a process, so I really do hope that you were at least able to get a message out of it that resonates with you. So please don't forget to subscribe, share and like at the link below, and also follow me on Instagram and Twitter. Thank you so much, and I'll see you later. Bye.